Good evening, dear friends, dear seekers of truth and inner strength. Today, I want to talk about a subtle yet profound power, a power that doesn't shout, a power that doesn't demand applause, a power that lives quietly, humbly yet changes lives. I speak of the power of silent women. There is a kind of strength in this world that doesn't make noise. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need a spotlight or recognition. Yet it has the power to hold families together, the power to heal, the power to inspire, the power to transform. This strength is often found in women who appear silent, but their silence carries more wisdom than many loud voices around us. People sometimes misunderstand silence. They assume that if someone is quiet, it means they are weak, scared, unsure, or passive. But silence, when chosen consciously, is not a sign of weakness, it is a sign of deep strength. It means the person has mastered something that most of us struggle with, the art of remaining peaceful even when the world around us is noisy. A woman who chooses silence doesn't choose it because she has nothing to say. She chooses it because she understands when to speak and when not to. She understands that reacting to every criticism, every opinion, every small negativity would only drain her energy. She knows that her peace is precious, and she protects it with dignity. That silence is not emptiness, it is self-respect. I once met someone who said, she doesn't argue, she doesn't fight, she doesn't raise her voice. Maybe she doesn't care. I smiled and said, the one who doesn't waste energy in noise is usually the one who cares the most because she saves her strength for action, not argument. When a person's actions speak, they don't need to raise their voice. Many women carry quiet storms inside them. Responsibilities, sacrifices, concerns, yet they show the world a calm face, and that calmness is not pretending. It is courage, it is intelligence, it is emotional maturity. They understand that shouting doesn't solve problems, but clarity does. Noise doesn't build relationships, but patience does. In silence there is focus, in silence there is wisdom. In silence there is the ability to listen not just to others, but to one's own thoughts, feelings and intuition, and that is where true strength is born, inside, not outside. A silent woman is not one who suppresses herself. She is one who has learned to choose her battles, to protect her peace, to respond instead of react. She embodies a balance of softness and strength, gentle enough to be compassionate, strong enough to stay steady. If you ever come across such a woman, don't overlook her. Notice her calmness. Appreciate her depth. Understand her quiet leadership. Not every leader stands on a stage. Some lead through presence, some through kindness, some through unwavering patience, and some through their silence. So let us learn to respect the strength that doesn't shout, the power that doesn't show off, resilience that stays hidden but holds everything together. Sometimes the most powerful voice is the one that speaks without saying a word. There is something extraordinary about those who carry strength quietly. They don't fight for attention, they don't argue to prove their point, and they don't feel the need to speak loudly just to be heard. Their presence itself speaks louder than their words ever could. And very often these people are women whose silence is not emptiness, but a deep ocean of understanding. Silence is misunderstood in our modern world. Today, noise is seen as confidence and silence is seen as timidity. But if you observe deeply, you will notice that silence can be a powerful declaration. I am at peace with myself. When a woman reaches this stage, the world cannot disturb her easily. She speaks only when needed, but her words carry weight because they come from clarity, not chaos. Sometimes when someone remains silent, others think, maybe she doesn't know what to say. But usually, she knows exactly what to say, she just chooses not to waste her energy on people or situations that don't deserve her inner peace. That choice is strength. That choice is wisdom. I once heard someone say, she doesn't argue. Maybe she doesn't understand, but it's often the opposite. She understands too much. She understands that arguments only increase distance, while silence can protect relationships. She understands that shouting may win an issue, but silence wins respect. She understands that reacting immediately may satisfy the ego, but thinking quietly protects the heart. There are women who carry entire worlds inside them, dreams, pains, responsibilities, hopes, yet they continue to walk with grace. They face challenges silently, they endure hardships with patience, and they forgive people without announcing it to the world. Their silence is not defeat, it is discipline, and discipline is a form of power. A silent woman is not helpless, she is focused, she is self-aware, she has learned that raising her voice doesn't raise her value. She knows that strength is not in shouting, but in staying calm when everything around her demands a reaction. She may not speak often, but when she does, her words heal, uplift, guide, and inspire. Silence also teaches something important: listening. In silence, one listens not only to others, but to one's own heart. A woman who listens to herself becomes emotionally strong. She knows what she wants, what she doesn't want, what she tolerates, and what she refuses to allow. Her boundaries are not announced, they are practiced. Do not mistake her silence for surrender. Most of the time, silent women are the strongest people in the room. Their strength is just wrapped in humility, their courage is wrapped in patience, their wisdom is wrapped in gentleness, and maybe this is the greatest lesson: not all strength is loud. Some strength is soft, steady, and serene. Some strength comes without words. Some strength is simply the ability to remain peaceful in a world full of noise. So whenever you meet such a woman, remember her silence is not absence. It is presence, it is purpose, it is power. There are moments in life when silence teaches us more than words ever could. And when silence comes from a woman who has learned to understand life deeply, that silence becomes a powerful force. It is not the silence of fear, nor the silence of helplessness. It is the silence of someone who has mastered the art of inner strength. People often assume that if someone is quiet, they must be weak. But quietness can be a sign of someone who has gone through enough life experiences to know that reacting instantly doesn't always bring solutions. Some women learn this very early, that calmness is more powerful than chaos, that composure protects more than confrontation, and that peace is more valuable than proving a point. There are times when a woman listens to hurtful words, endures unfair situations, and yet chooses to respond with dignity instead of anger. This does not mean she doesn't feel anything. She feels deeply, but she holds herself with maturity. She knows that raising her voice may win the argument, but controlling her voice wins her self-respect. She understands that silence is not about suppressing the truth. It is about choosing the right moment to express it. A silent woman is like a tree in a storm. The winds may shake her branches, but the roots remain strong. And that inner strength is not visible to everyone, only to those who know how much she carries without complaining. Many women bear the weight of expectations, responsibilities, and emotional pressure, yet they remain steady. Their silence is not a sign that everything is easy, it is a sign that they refuse to let difficulty change their character. Sometimes her silence becomes a mirror that reflects the truth to others. When she doesn't react emotionally, people start to realize the impact of their actions. Silence can be a powerful teacher. It can bring understanding without argument, reflection without blame, and change without force. But this silence is not always stillness. Inside her, there is a conversation with her values, her faith, her wisdom, and her patience. She chooses her actions carefully. She chooses her words thoughtfully. She chooses her reactions responsibly. That is strength, the strength to control oneself when one cannot control the situation. Some women don't express their pain loudly, but their resilience speaks through their actions. They wake up every day, take care of the world around them, keep moving forward, keep supporting others, and keep believing. Their silence is filled with perseverance, and maybe that is why such women inspire so many people. They don't need a stage or applause. Their presence itself becomes a message. That power does not always roar. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it breathes softly. Sometimes it stands tall in stillness. So when you meet a woman whose power is silent, honor her, understand her, appreciate her, because the world may not hear her voice often, but her strength echoes in everything she does. There is a beautiful saying: some people make noise, others make a difference, and very often The ones making the biggest difference are not the loudest in the room. They are the ones who choose silence not out of fear, but out of deep understanding. A woman who stays silent by choice carries a kind of strength that many people miss because they are too busy looking for noise. When a woman learns to rely on her inner voice more than the voices outside, something powerful begins to grow within her. She doesn't need to shout to prove her worth. She doesn't need to constantly explain herself to be respected. Her silence becomes her shield, her wisdom, and her strength. It is the silence of someone who has seen enough of life to know that the loudest responses are not always the most effective ones. There are women who choose silence because they understand timing. They understand that not every moment requires a reaction. Not every conversation deserves their energy. Not every conflict is worth losing peace over. Their silence is not the absence of strength, it is the presence of clarity. And clarity is a luxury that many people lose in the noise of anger, ego, and impulse. Sometimes her silence confuses people. They wonder, why doesn't she say anything? Why doesn't she fight back? Why doesn't she respond? What they don't realize is that she has learned to outgrow the need for constant confrontation. She has learned that responding to negativity only pulls her into the same negativity. So she chooses silence not because she is weak, but because she refuses to become like the noise around her. A silent woman often carries the biggest battles within herself. She makes decisions quietly, fixes problems without announcing them, and heals wounds no one even knows she has. She gives love without demanding a return, offers support without seeking praise, and stands strong without advertising her courage. Her silence is a sign of inner discipline and ability to hold herself together even when everything around her seems to fall apart. And when she finally speaks, her words carry weight. People listen because they know that when someone who loves silence chooses to speak, it is never random, it is always intentional, it is always truthful, it is always meaningful. Silence gives her words strength. Her silence also teaches something to the world: patience, the strength of waiting for the right moment, the wisdom of choosing peace over unnecessary battles, the maturity of understanding that arguments don't always bring understanding, sometimes silence does. If you have ever met such a woman, you will notice something calming about her presence. She doesn't rush, she doesn't push, she doesn't chase. She simply lives with grace, and that grace becomes her silent power. So let us appreciate the strength that comes without sound, the courage that comes without display, the resilience that comes without noise, because sometimes the strongest power is the one that speaks through silence. In life, we often meet two kinds of people: those who carry their strength loudly and those whose strength is carried in silence. And something beautiful happens when you truly observe the silent ones. You begin to realize that silence is not the absence of words, it is the presence of wisdom. Many women learn this wisdom through experiences that shape them quietly, gently, and profoundly. There are moments when a woman stands in the middle of challenges, misunderstandings, or emotional storms, yet she does not shout, argue, or demand attention. She simply remains calm, not because she doesn't feel anything, but because she feels too deeply to let emotions control her. She has learned that raising her voice rarely raises her value, so she chooses silence, a silence that is filled with strength, clarity, and dignity. People often misjudge such women. They think she is silent. Maybe she doesn't have the courage to speak, but courage does not always roar. Sometimes courage is the quiet decision to remain composed, to not react, to not let negativity define her. A silent woman often has more courage in her heart than many who speak loudly. She understands that peace is worth protecting even if others don't understand her silence. A woman's silence is often the result of deep reflection. She has observed life carefully. She has seen how words can wound, how anger can destroy, how ego can blind. She has learned, through her own experiences, that silence can save relationships, protect dignity, and prevent unnecessary pain. Her silence is not coldness, it is consciousness. There are times when she watches people misunderstand her, judge her, or even take her for granted, but she doesn't react impulsively. She knows that people interpret from their level of awareness, not hers, and instead of lowering herself to match their energy, she chooses to remain steady. Her silence becomes a way of saying, "I know my worth. I do not need to prove it." A silent woman often holds the heaviest responsibilities. She supports others quietly. She heals wounds silently. She sacrifices without making it a performance. She forgives without announcing it. And she continues to walk with grace even when grace is difficult. Silence is filled with resilience, but silence is not her weakness. It is her strength, because when someone who chooses silence finally speaks, her words carry authenticity. They carry honesty. They carry compassion. They carry truth. People listen not because she is loud, but because she has earned respect through her calmness. Her silence also teaches others something meaningful. Not everything requires a reaction. Not every battle needs to be fought. Not every opinion needs to be answered. Sometimes the strongest response is the one that keeps your peace intact. So whenever you see a woman whose strength is wrapped in silence, take a moment to understand her depth. Appreciate her calm. Respect her inner world. Because silence in her case is not emptiness, it is elegance. It is patience. It is power.